Hi folks. Today I want to share with you a technique that is dynamite to use for teams when they are feeling like it's a little unclear who's supposed to do what and who has ultimate authority and responsibility for what. Oftentimes what I find is when conflict seems to rise overall in a team, and you start dissecting where's that conflict coming from and why is it happening, one of the really common places for it to come from is lack of clarity or a common agreement about roles. Who does what about which pieces of work. So I wanted to share this with you because I've been sharing it with a lot of people lately, a lot of clients online and in person. I'm Dr. Erika Garms, CEO of WorkingSmarts, where we grow healthier and higher performing workplaces using brain-friendly methods. For the best research-based practical workplace advice, hit subscribe and the notification bell so that you never miss a single video. So it's called the RASCI technique. It's also the name of the matrix which you get from doing this RASCI process. The RASCI matrix is a matrix. Here is what goes across the top and what goes down the y-axis. So imagine an Excel spreadsheet or a Word table, whatever your chart of choice is. Down the y-axis, you're going to list the areas of work. Not every single task that happens in your team, but the major buckets of work that are accomplished by your team or your group. Across the top, across the x-axis going across, you list the roles that are included in your team. Now, caution here, not to use people's names. It is very tempting to want to put people's names, staff members and leaders also, names across the top as the people who do these pieces of work. Not a good idea, however, because if your team is like most teams, over time you morph the role to the human, to the specific person who is in that role. The reason that is not desirable is that we stop seeing the role as defined by the work that needs to be done, and we see more and more the work as being defined by the interests or the history or the background or the capabilities of the specific person. Okay, so in sum, our view becomes more and more subjective, less and less objective, which is not a good view to slip into 100%. Work buckets down the y-axis, role names across the top. So roles in your group might be project manager, they might be lead technician, they might be engineer 1, engineer 2, engineer 3, whatever the roles are, perhaps job titles, they go across the top. And now here's where you get into the letters that spell RACI. It's an acronym. R stands for responsible, A stands for accountable, S is for supported, supports, C stands for consulted, and I stands for informed. So what you do next is you fill in all the squares that are created by crossing the work areas with the roles. For example, let's say there's work bucket 1, and for that piece of work, this role is ultimately responsible for it. They get an R, or that role gets an R in that square. Let's say there are 3 other people, different roles, that are consulted about that piece of work, but not ultimately responsible for it. Then those 3 roles get a C for consulted in those boxes. Let's say there is one person, maybe the leader, who is ultimately has the authority for that decision. So let's put an A in the leader box for that piece of work. So you continue filling in the letters that go with SCI for each piece of work by role. And The wonderful thing about this is it's tough in a good way. So it will definitely cause some really good specific conversations about what the differences are between being accountable, being responsible, being consulted, being informed. Invariably what comes up is this how it should be? Are we filling out the chart based on how it should be or how it is right now? And most often I suggest filling it out the way it should be, because then you see where you want to go and need to go, which will illuminate the gap between that and where you are right now. What kinds of gaps can emerge are pieces of work where there's nobody clearly responsible or accountable. Another example, a role that isn't currently being consulted or informed about a certain area of work that they should be. Sometimes doing this illuminates the need for another role that isn't on that list in order to accomplish certain pieces of work on your chart. Oftentimes there's confusion or conflict about situations where more than one role think they are both ultimately responsible and have the authority for a piece of work. So again, all of these conflicts are good conflicts because you want the conversation to emerge so that you can iron out the wrinkles in this matrix and take action according to what is illuminating itself. I have some samples of RASCI matrices. They can be really simple. They can be super complicated with subcategories and color coding, or anything in between. So I would say that the best recommendation I can make for you is to just do it. Do it either yourself if you are a leader or manager to get a picture of what you think the team should look like, or even better is if you can get the whole team involved in constructing this RASCI matrix. It is one activity, one document that you can squeeze so much efficiency and productivity out of because of the conversations that happen from doing it and because of the action steps that it points to really clearly when you're finished. I hope that's helpful. Make sure that you look in the description for a couple of links to sample RASCI matrices, and let me know if I can ever be of assistance to you in doing this with a team.